NOS4A2.
What is up, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of our NOS4A2 recap show, where we break down the latest episode of the new AMC series based on the book by Joe Hill. I am, of course, one of your hosts, Griffin Schiller, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Mike Johnson from Real School. Mike, how's it going?
Not bad, buddy. Not bad. We're coming up to the end now. Only 2 episodes left, and they're airing back to back for the big finale next week. So it's good stuff.
Yeah, we might have to break our little recap up into a 2-parter. Who knows?
Good call. Good call. Yeah.
But anyways, we're going to be recapping episode number 8, Parnassus. I think that's how you say it. I'm sure I'm wrong or something like that. But before we get into that, a little housekeeping. Just want to apologize once again for another late episode. We try and do these in advance, or as we release them basically as the episode is airing. That doesn't always happen. I was at San Diego Comic-Con the past week, and we just couldn't line up a schedule to record. So that's why you're getting this episode a little late, but hopefully you enjoy it all the same. And the second bit of housekeeping here is that NOS4A2 got picked up for a second season. It got renewed, so that's some awesome news. I'm very excited. I'm sure, Mike, you're very excited as well, which means that we get to continue this show for another season, which is very exciting. We've enjoyed discussing it, and I mean, you know, the season isn't over yet, but I'm curious as to where they're going to go for the next season. Hopefully more seasons after that.
Yeah, it was interesting because I didn't even really think about this show getting renewed, and not in the sense of I didn't think it was good enough. I clearly think it's good enough.
Oh, yeah.
I just wasn't sure what they were going to do with this season, how they were going to tie things up, if it was going to be kind of a finite series, you know, more like British television, because it just seemed like it was lending itself to that. But I'm, like you said, as soon as it got renewed, we were talking about it, and I go, wow, I'm really curious as to what they're going to do in the second season. So, yeah, it'll be cool.
Yeah, you know, what's going to change? What are they going to improve upon? All that stuff. I mean, these are conversations that we can have, you know, after the season has ended, and I'm sure we will have after the season has ended. But it's good to know that there is another season in store for us. So, with all that out of the way, let's get into this episode number 8, Parnassus. If you are new to our recap shows, basically the way it works is Mike kind of takes us through the episodes and breaks down what happened. We stop along the way and have a conversation about the stuff that we found interesting and so forth. So, Mike, you want to get ready to go into this?
Yeah, man. This you and I were talking about it. We really liked this episode. And
yeah, I did. It was, and I liked it for the character. I mean, this was a very character drama centric episode. Mm-hmm. And for me, the main highlight, weirdly, well, maybe not the main highlight, but like at least in contention for the main highlight, was Maggie, which is crazy because that has been like the exact opposite for the entirety of the season. And so it's like she finally got her due in episode 8, and I think they were kind of preparing for that with the events of episode 7, and I just absolutely loved the opening with her character, which you are going to get into right now.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I'll add what I thought of this whole thing right after. But you're right. It opens on a very impactful moment, very dramatic moment. And I know you and I have had our criticisms of Miss Jakara Smith in terms of the character of Maggie.
Yeah, I preface this by saying I think she's done a great job acting. I don't think the material she's been given has been all that great.
Right. And we even touched on that, where we said the writers weren't necessarily giving her a lot to play off of. She was very much like a mentor character. She was whatever they needed her to be. This was the episode where I will gladly, stick my foot in my mouth or take it out of my mouth, so to speak, because this was an episode where they gave her a lot and she knocked it out of the park, because it opens with her kind of, really coming to terms with what happened last episode, where she knows that the sheriff was at least taken. So Maggie is missing her father figure, surrogate father figure. She's kind of panicking. She's wondering who can she contact, who can she call, who can she go to for help. She knows that she just had a fight with Vic where she basically said, like, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. And we see her going some like really emotional moments where she's just sobbing because she knows like things are getting bad. And she goes back to her Scrabble tiles, which is a big moment, obviously, for Maggie. And it's a big moment for the confusion.
And they kind of just show up on her doorstep. But I think there's something important to note before that is she reaches out to her mom.
Right.
I mean, she's that desperate. She's to that point where she just feels like she has to reach out to some sort of family because she lost the only family that she has. And the response is just it's just heartbreaking. You know, she calls and her mom basically is like, well, you know the terms, you got to get drug tested every week or whatever, something like that. No girls in the house, go to church. And then she just hangs up on her mom, which is like, well,
yeah.
That's not going to help. Nothing seems to have changed on that front. And I think this whole opening is just, before I even say that, I think the thing I've really come to like about Maggie is, and I didn't necessarily like it before, but a lot of the stuff that we learn about her isn't told in like an expository manner. It's really just like her environment, how she lives, what's in her trash. Oh, it's this empty pill container. The way she reacts to certain conversations and people. We see her in the bar, obviously a little bit later on, and like, I feel like it gives us everything we need to know about her in a very subtle way, and in a way that allows the actress to just give a very physically raw and emotional performance, which I thought she did, especially in this episode. Now, earlier on, I thought they weren't giving us enough, and I think it was like a little more spoon-fed, but as the show has kind of progressed, they've really just they've developed her character mainly in this episode very tastefully, I guess I should say.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic because I think it stems back to what we were discussing in previous episodes where we said because Maggie herself is so much full of exposition where she just literally like lays out. I think you're right, where when she actually reveals stuff about herself, it's almost like the writers are giving her a break a little bit, where they say, okay, now is the time where we're going to let things unravel naturally, like you said. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. So, yeah, some interesting things come out of this. We get a lot of development for Maggie. She, even when she goes back to her tiles, when she's looking for them, and like you said, they kind of magically appear outside as if by fate. She reaches in and she asks, where's Joe? Where's Sheriff Bly? And it just comes out with 4 letters and it's dead. And that's our teaser. So a really awesome way to set up this episode because you're like, oh, okay. And like we had mentioned before, we knew this moment was going to come where Maggie was going to be back into the adventure, so to speak, and what was going to be the calling that brought her back. And, we see that desperation throughout this episode with this character. But right off the bat, like we said, Jakara really had a powerful teaser and a really good opening to this show for sure.
Yeah, and I think it really sets the stage for an episode that's focused on the character drama and more specifically everyone who isn't Manx. And I think the episode was all the better for it.
Yeah, you're right. It was a very well-balanced episode, actually. And, to your point, what you had mentioned about how things kind of unravel naturally. So we're finding out things about the world and about the characters simply because of what's happening around them more than them speaking directly to one another. We have moments of that, but it is just things progress naturally. I felt like it was the most natural written episode.
Yeah, I would agree.
We didn't get any exposition, and I was like, or at least we didn't get exposition in the way of I reach into a bag and grab Scrabble tiles. They're magic and they tell me the future, like things like that. Yeah. It was just so natural throughout. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Well balanced, and more importantly, we've got 3 concentric storylines in this episode, which I thought was great. So Maggie gets that, and we'll touch on that a little bit more. But we rejoin Vic and her her struggles, so to speak.
Oh man, the girl can't catch a break, man.
And it's funny because she does catch a break in this episode. And
yeah,
as
but
an
then
art teacher,
it's shortly ruined, you know.
Of course. I'll ask you this because, well, I'll introduce it to our audience first. But of course, she gets accepted to RISD. She gets accepted to the art school, full scholarship. She did it. You know, she made her way in, and of course, goes to her mom. Yeah, seriously, man. Like, these parents drive me crazy. I guess that's the whole point.
That's the point. Of course. Yeah.
Goes to her mom, and her mom is just like, you know, great. Okay. Yeah. You're going to go to college. Like, way to go, kid. You know, just an awful human being. It's been running throughout this show that basically we know that Vic can't count on her parents. And we know that while they're very pained characters, they have their emotions and they have things bottled up. They're just not good people in a whole lot of ways.
Yeah.
And this was one where I was like so mad at the mom.
Well, it was her episode. You know, like last week it was the dad's episode, and this week it was Linda's episode.
You're right.
And much like with last week, what's the guy? I forget his name. The actor who plays the dad.
Chris plays the dad.
Yeah.
Eben or Ebon.
Yeah, Eben. Yeah, Yeah, you're right. Sorry, I just blanked there for a second. But it's like he gave a really great performance that episode, especially in that bar scene. And I thought that Linda, the actress who plays Linda, I forget her. Oh wait, it's literally
Virginia.
right in front of me.
Virginia
Call. I'm like, I know I have these names right in front of me, but Jesus, it's been a long day. Anyways, Virginia, she gave an exceptional performance this episode in several scenes. I mean, a lot of it was like really bottled up and contained emotion, and then she would just let it out. And then, you know, when she was having those confrontations with Vic, I really felt it, because you just felt that like she had nothing in her life. She has no idea like what to do about anything, and she's just like holding this resentment towards Vic because like she's gonna be alone, and so there's a lot of baggage that comes with her. And I thought Virginia Call did a just all around incredible job, really just letting everything out this episode.
Yeah, and it was a great build-up, I felt, too, because, like you said, Vic and her dad, Vic and Chris, had that moment last episode where she finally let him know he was never there for her. Like, you know, you got that bike as an apology. And they slowly build it up throughout this episode where Linda, the mom, sees the way Vic is behaving, right, as well. Not just the fact that she's going off to college, not just the fact that you can immediately pick up that Linda thinks, you know, Vic thinks she's better than her. You know what I mean? There's that sense of jealousy. But, you know, her friends, or Vic's friends, throw her a party to congratulate her because she got in. She's going to be a college girl. She goes there and immediately she starts back up on the drinking again. And she looks, you know, like kind of a little loose with her morals, so to speak. She's making out with our boy. Oh, man, what's that kid's name again? You know, the guy we always cheer for, too.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. Craig. Yes. This is not a good recap for names.
It's tough, man. It's funny because the actors, most of them have very bizarre, unique names. So the actors, we'll get them eventually. But then it's funny because within the show, everybody pretty much has not a unique name. It's like Linda and Chris and Craig, and it's hard to remember the two. So anyways, so we see this and we can see that her mom is watching her throughout the whole time, and she's just like, I am not pleased with this behavior. This is what I'm worried about when she goes off to college. You know, she constantly even brings up the fact that she feels like Vic is going to be raped at college.
Oh, that
you know what I mean? She's going to be attacked. And
she just flat out says, and I was like, Jesus. Yeah, I mean, it's really tough to watch, just because it's just this broken family that just keeps shattering even more. And then like it's like, oh, your daughter just got into college on a full scholarship, and like, what, you're gonna make it all about you? And so it just shows her selfish nature as well. And it's like the sympathy that you had for her, with her relationship with her dad, Chris, I don't want to say it completely goes out the window, but like it kind of does, because like Vic kind of throws it back at her. She's like, the reason you stayed with him was because you didn't want to be alone or something like that. You've just always made it about you. It's just, it was not a great episode for Linda. Linda just kind of got what was coming to her in a way.
And it's great. Here's where I give the writers a lot of credit as well. It's great that we go through this so often with the parents, because I do feel it's realistic for who the parents are or who they would be. You know, deadbeat parents would be the kind of parents that would like make you kind of love them again and make you hate them.
Yeah, they don't go through cycles. Yeah. Because like in this episode, I liked her dad. Like, you know, Chris, he comes in, he's like, I'm not drinking. She's like, I give it a week. You know, he goes out to like talk to Linda, and he's like, hey, listen, you should be happy. This is great. And then she's like, blah, 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 and walks away. And I'm like, he's like, okay, so he's actually trying. He's already went through the acknowledgement phase. And so Linda has to do the same. She has to go through the acknowledgement phase. And so maybe next episode she won't suck.
You think this is, absolutely. You're right. With the cycle that they've been going through, there's got to be redemption, because you're right. Like Chris had a good episode where he comes in once again, he's charming, and they offer him some champagne. He goes, no thanks. And like both Vic and Linda look at him like, what's going on? He's like, I gave it up. And he even says to Vic, you know, you were right. It sank in. Who knows? Because we all know, you know, unfortunately, alcoholics, they have cycles themselves. So it could happen where once again he becomes not such a great person. But yeah, you're right. That exchange between the two parents was great, where he's like, you know, she's got a good head on her shoulders, Linda, like, don't worry. And she's just like, oh, you know everything, right? And so once again, it's just that complete 180 where you go, the mom is such a dick. And, you know, and then dad is really pulling the strings again. And
I know.
Go, Dad, thank you.
It's a vicious cycle, man. It's a vicious cycle.
Yeah. So that kind of tidies up the Vic storyline, except there is a very important part where she is attacked, right? And where we have a major confrontation between she and Bing, because Bing is finally getting his own ideas, which is scary enough, where he says, this is what I have to do to get back on the nice list to make sure I get to Christmas Land.
Right.
And so he ends up kidnapping Vic, gassing her, being the gas mask man, taping her up in the basement, his basement, you know, doing all this stuff, being very sinister. And we've seen this behavior before because we know what happened to the mom of Haley's mom in a previous episode. And it's that same MO where he's gassing her and he's trying to get her to repeat that, you know, I love you, Bing Partridge, more than anything.
Yeah. It gets,
and you're just like, man, where's this going to go? Yeah. So very good. And again, a small part of Vic's storyline, but a very important part too, because Bing, you know, he's got some great moments. And again, you know,
Bing has a lot of great moments in this episode. You get him in like full gas mask man, like just in that personality. Once again, you know, Olafar does an incredible job just being unhinged and like terrifying from just like a purely disturbing standpoint. Yeah, but and like their conversations that they have in the basement are interesting. You know, he's like, well, the only way I could get back into Christmas Land is by killing you. And then she's like, well, he didn't want me dead. You know, he was going to invite me to go there. And he's like struggling to believe this. And so it's just like the manipulation once again. He gets he gets kind of manipulated because she is telling the truth, but she's just like using it to set herself free. But yeah, listening to Bing like recount the story of or recount why he loves Christmas, and then like the story of how he killed his parents and how that made him feel. I mean, that was just really, really creepy and unsettling stuff. And then like seeing like it would go from like Vic saying like, oh, I had the best thing happened to me today when I got into RISD, and then like he would break out of that mentality and be like, you got in? Oh, like, wow, that's awesome. Right, and then he was like, and then he would just like immediately switch back and go like, yeah, so I remember that feeling when I killed my parents. And I was just like, whoa, this guy is like, he's just like flipping personalities like a light switch. And I'm just like, geez, this is not only great acting, it's really interesting, just like character stuff going on here that I ate up.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Kind of goes back to, I was saying about how the writers can really create well-balanced parent characters where we're not so sure about them, and it's that emotional roller coaster. You're absolutely right. Like Bing, yeah, he had that. I forgot about that moment too, where she says, "I got in," and they sound like friends again.
Yeah, right. Well, that was the thing. I was just like, holy. He's like, it was just an immediate turn back to like the janitor guy, and like,
right. And he's like, "Oh, that's great, Vic." Yeah, and he's like, "Oh yeah, right. I forgot why I kidnapped you."
yeah,
so,
it's crazy.
Yeah, it's true. And you know what? It's funny because you and I both follow the showrunner Jamie O'Brien on Twitter, and she had posted how she really felt that this episode was the darkest we've had so far. And I totally agree because of that probably 10-minute moment in the episode, right?
Yeah.
And it was very dark, and it was because it wasn't the supernatural dark.
Yeah, it was just like real human, like just shit going wrong left and right, and then you have this big bumbling psychopath on the loose. All of that. Yeah, I would also agree. I think this is definitely the darkest episode. By far. It just, everything felt, you felt the weight of everything going on here. Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I think you had kind of touched on that. Bing has some really creepy moments where he's talking about when he killed his parents, but also it was that a whole sexual vibe because he's talking about. You didn't know. Well, you did know where he kind of wanted to go with it, but it was like you didn't for a second, and then he would like, kind of turn and be like, "Oh, we're still friends," and then you'd be like, "Well, I want you to tell me I love you, Bing Partridge," and you're like, "Well, I know where this is going." So
yeah, and he talks about how Haley's mom smelled.
Oh yeah,
and you're like, oh. So again, like you said. Full credit to Oliver, the actor who plays Bing, because you're right. You can turn it on a dime, just instantly go from creep. So yeah, so this is really like I said, it kind of tidies up Vic's storyline, because I think the coolest part about that is when she goes back to see Craig. He's like, that guy should be in prison. Like, what are we doing here? And she's like, I can't report it. For all of these reasons. So it's kind of interesting. I can't even remember the reason she gave, to be brutally honest. But she said,
because she was going to wind up back in the psych ward.
That's right. And nobody would actually believe that he attacked.
Yeah,
good call. Yeah. So it's interesting because obviously it sets up a lot of things. We knew that Bing had to not be in jail probably for the last 2 episodes, right? We need some sort of confrontation and closure, I think, on that.
I think I have a feeling what the last episode or the second to last episode is going to be, if it goes similarly to the books. It just it feels like if they do what I think they're going to do, it feels like it would be the right stopping point.
Okay, I think I know where you're going with that. Do you want to discuss it further?
No, absolutely not. Okay. We're gonna wait till see what happens. But there's just because I don't know how many people have or haven't read the books. I mean, there's a scene in the books where anyways, we're not gonna go into it. But
well, okay. So let's end. Well, we don't need to talk about Vix anymore, and I want to talk about the rest of Maggie's storyline because I want to save my favorite part of the episode or storyline of the episode for last. So Maggie's misadventure happens where she kind of feels like once again she's got nobody to go to. Sheriff Bly is dead. Her mom, like you said, really just slammed the door in her face metaphorically, and she's just like, I can't go to Vic. Like, this is it. So she falls back into her addiction and her bad habits, right? And that, I thought, again, it was good because, like you said, the development with Maggie really comes up naturally. This was a great episode where we just see, what was this behavior that we kind of got hints at because, Joel was talking about this where he's like, I believe in you. So he's been there for her before. And we know that, she was found on a bench, I think he said at one point, and, he kind of nursed her back to health. So yeah, we see her go to a bar. She's drinking. She flirts with another girl. She dances with her all night. She takes drugs with this girl. She steals drugs from this girl.
Yeah, she's just using her to get to her drugs. Yeah, it's just sad stuff.
Yeah, and it kind of mirrors, like we were saying, the same kind of, I don't know, things or touches that we had about why this is the darkest episode, because it's not supernatural again, and we see one of the main characters fall to a really dark place. And again, the horror doesn't come from, little kid vampires stabbing people with scissors. It's, something real. It's addiction. And Maggie's like pretty close to death's door, I'd say, in the, final little bit of this episode. And so again, we just see like, what this poor girl's going through, and you feel the impact, like you had mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. I just thought it was just incredibly well acted, very real. You felt everything about her, or you felt everything that she was going through very naturally.
Yeah, for sure. So, okay, are we good with Maggie?
I think we're good with Maggie. I mean, obviously they have her and Vic reunite at the end in a very sweet moment. Maggie just feels abandoned, and then Vic comes when she needs her most, saves her life basically, and and then that's literally where the episode ends, which I think is very fitting. It begins with the real people, the characters. It ends with the real people and their rekindling of a relationship, I guess you can say, and not with Manx or anything. So,
right. So here we go. My favorite part. Very short part of the episode, or the shortest storyline, but this is where we got to see some really fun stuff with Manx once again, and the whole mythology of this world. So as the title of the episode would hint at, Parnassus is a hangout, a bar, or whatever you want to call it, a dive, I think is the best way of putting it, for what can only be described as supernatural villains, I think is the best way of putting it.
It's those How It Should Have Ended series on YouTube. It's the villain bar in there. That's literally exactly what this was.
Yeah, some great little Easter eggs in there. You and I were talking about a few because we were trying to figure out who they were. I mean, the clearest one, clear as day, is obviously
the
Pennywise is in that bar.
I mean, it's really funny because he just looks like shit, but it's they don't even care. They're just fuck it.
And what's funny about that too, I mean, that little cameo, what's hilarious is he's even got the red balloon with him.
Yeah.
And I was like, really? Anyways, that was a funny little thing where I go, I'm pretty sure people would have got that without, especially because I think it was in episode 2 or maybe even 1 where Manx looks at the map, right? And it says Pennywise's Circus or something like that, right? Yeah. So you knew they're part of the same universe. But the greatest part is that we see, fully healthy Manx walk into this dive, and as he walks in and he sees all these villainous figures, they're all scared shitless of this guy.
Oh yeah, because I mean the Christmas music starts coming on, they're all like, "Oh shit, we're gonna get the hell out of here." There was you were talking about characters in the bar, obviously Pennywise and stuff, but it's I noticed the guy with the Freddy Krueger kind of shirt, which was not anything from Stephen King universe, but I thought it was kind of funny, just a nice nod to horror icons, I guess. I mean, I highly doubt that guy was, an overweight Freddy Krueger, but the fact that he could be is hilarious to me. So.
That was good. Yeah. And I love that where he's just walking through and he's got 2 drinks and they all kind of look up and they go, nope. And they just clear out.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, it was great. So he's talking to his friend Abe, I think was the character's name. And what was great about this is, once again, this could have been a scene where it could have easily fallen into the exposition trap. It could have been, so I met a new girl, and I think she should be, the mother to my children. And Abe goes, dude, what are you doing? Do you remember it happened this time? Do you remember? But they didn't do that. Now, they conveyed that same information. But I give them all the credit in the world, because I felt like that was a natural conversation between 2 guys who have known each other for what seems like hundreds of years, or maybe not hundreds, but definitely a long time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And how Abe picks up on this pattern that Manx has about you fall in love with these girls, these powerful creatives, and what happens, you were ready to propose to Jolene.
Yeah, I was waiting for you to get it. I was I think he's got it. He's close. This has been the recap of names. That's just
we just need a list, I think. Yeah, that'll be, maybe we'll do that for the final episode, where we'll just talk about all the names we've forgotten throughout.
So everyone.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I really like that. And they basically, it talked about like Manx is like, what am I going to do here? Like I'm once again stuck. She's special. Vic is something else. And he's like, dude, Abe says like, buddy, like you did this last time. You proposed to Jolene, and like all these things happen every single time. He's like, you just need to kill her, like just straight up, right? And I loved it too because again. Yeah. It's funny, it's dark, it's creepy, but at the same time, it did seem like a natural conversation. Like these two have been friends. Like Abe is just giving his buddy advice about the women in his life, in a much creepier way. And it was just, I just thought it was really well done. It was definitely my favorite part of the episode.
Yeah, it was entertaining just to kind of like see that conversation and see just like, Manx basically going through like a little bit of like relationship therapy, but yeah, I mean, like to me, this wasn't necessarily one of the highlights for me. Like it was fun, and I like understood its purpose and all that good stuff. But like to me, the more interesting stuff was like Maggie. That's like just the issues she's got going on. Vic with the parental relationships really just like fucking her over continuously. That was the really just riveting stuff to me. But like I like that they threw this in there because it weirdly added some levity, even though it was like dark.
Yeah, it broke it up, right? It's a very well constructed episode. Yeah. And not to mention that, like you had said, at the end of Maggie's and Vic's journey, they once again, get back. One thing we should have mentioned is the fact that Vic gets her knife back. She does.
Yeah. Why do we not? Right? This has just been the story of this episode. We are scatterbrained.
We got it, man. We're on top of it.
We're on top of that. Yeah, but no, she does. She does get her knife back. Her mom just hid it in the basement. So that was really cool. She got, it felt like, Captain America being reunited with like his shield or something like that. It was just like really cool.
Yeah. And she immediately uses it to go save her friend Maggie. So, there's that sense, that kind of thematic camaraderie throughout this episode where like we see a different side of Manx. Because you know what, in that little conversation, when he's talking about Jolene too, he also sounds sad.
Jolene
died, right?
You see a little bit of how it definitely has like affected him emotionally. I think that's actually a really great point you bring up, because this is the episode of camaraderie, because we get Manx and Abe in the bar there. We get Vic and Craig a little bit more, but then also Vic and her parents, not necessarily camaraderie, but they are like relationships, like and really it's more Vic and her mom. Then we get Vic and Bing, and like that whole thing, and then Maggie and Vic, and then Maggie and like so you're right, it is like the episode of like pairings, which was that was really well done.
Yeah, absolutely. So it kind of tidies up, or it just, I really like the episode.
I do too. I think is it my favorite episode? Maybe. I don't know. It's certainly up there. It's like a top 3 episode for me, just because of how well paced, written, structured, and how dark it was. It just, once again, I really felt the weight of everything. So yeah, I mean, job well done, and kudos to Jeremy Webb. I was about to say Jeremy Renner. Jeremy Webb, who directed the episode. This is his first episode he directed, or I'm sorry, nice. Not first episode he directed, second episode he directed, but still excellent job. Yeah,
for sure. And you know what, like, you're kind of hoping now, because we had talked about throughout the season that there are those kind of necessary evil episodes where, nothing really happens, but they develop stuff. We're past that. We know there are only 2 episodes left, right? And so for this to do both, to not only set things up for the future, to give us not exposition necessarily, but more information, and to entertain us, and to thrill us, and to really develop characters, and it's well acted. Yeah, you're right. I don't know if it's my favorite. It's definitely top 3. Yeah. It may be a very close second, to be honest.
I think if we, and this is always like, this is a subjective medium. I think whatever. But I think if you take a step back and you look at just from like a technical craftsmanship perspective, I feel like this may actually be the best episode. But in terms of my favorites, you're right. It's definitely top 3, but that's about as much as I can say regarding that right now.
Fair enough.
That's it. We covered the whole episode, so there you go. This has been just like a shit show of a recap, but you always have one of these in the mix. But anyways, the most important thing is, what did you all think? Be sure to let us know your thoughts and opinions of episode number 8. I was gonna say Parnassus, down in the comments section below. Tell me how we suck at naming not conventions, just suck at names and speaking in general. Be sure to let us know all your thoughts and opinions down there as well. And the question of the week is this your favorite episode? Or is it just, is it top 3 or something like that? Yeah, but be sure to let us know that down in the comment section below. Mr. Mike Real School Johnson, thank you for joining me as always. Where can everyone find you?
Well, as always, you can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Instagram, real.school. You can find me on YouTube, Best Kept Secret, Real School with 2 E's. Go check me out, please.
Boom. There you go. Go check him out and all the cool stuff he's doing over on his channel. But before I close this out, thank you once again for all the support you have given our recap show thus far. We have a lot of fun doing this, and we really enjoy interacting with you all in the comments section. So thank you for continuing to watch this show. As always, guys, be sure to like this video, share it with your friends, all your NOS4A2 friends, and subscribe to this channel for more recaps and more movie and television related content on a weekly basis. If you like me specifically and you like what I have to say, you can give me a follow on Twitter at Griff Schiller. All right, that's gonna do it for this recap show, and we'll catch you next week for the finale. Take care.